So I wanted to talk about two of my favorite young players in the NHL. They were two of my favorite prospects when they were draft eligible, and now they have been drafted, but you could say that the way their developments and their progressions may be going, it's not really going all too well, and it's not really the faults of the players, it's more so the teams. Let's talk today about the Columbus Blue Jackets, because when it comes to their game yesterday against the Vegas Golden Knights, it was a 4-2 Vegas win, and the unfortunate part about this game was that the Blue Jackets ended up making a pretty big call-up for a guy that they didn't even play. You know from the title, you know from the thumbnail, today we are talking about David Jiricek. Because Jiricek the other day was recalled to the Columbus Blue Jackets on an emergency basis. This was an emergency. They needed to do this. And the problem with this, you could say, was that the Cleveland Monsters in the AHL, they're having themselves a pretty difficult time with their roster management, and when they're going up against really good teams over the weekend, hey Blue Jackets, it's not like we have two extremely important games versus the #1 team in the AHL and we're missing pretty much everyone. I agree with you. It's a little disappointing that we have to basically recall everyone for a lost season where we have nothing to gain. Honestly hoping we would send Fantilli down when he returns to help out. We did it with Sillinger before. And so, not only did the David Jiricek call-up kind of screw over the Cleveland Monsters a little bit, but the worst part is, they didn't even use him. After the game yesterday against the Vegas Golden Knights wherein the Blue Jackets lost, the Blue Jackets sent Jiricek back down with the intention of hopefully getting him to be able to play some AHL action to end off the weekend. But as Aaron Portzline goes out there and says, it sounds like Jiricek, he didn't make it back to Cleveland from Las Vegas in time to play tonight for the Monsters. A lost weekend. No games at either level for one of the Blue Jackets' top prospects. Of course, this was another avoidable bad decision from the staff and front office. Par for the course of this season, though, they're consistently bad. I'll give them that. Clown show, feels so bad for him. The way this organization constantly fumbles things is alarming. Pascal Vincent masterclass. I want his head on a pike outside Nationwide Arena after this season. Enough is okay, that's really brutal. No decapitations on my watch. I'm not condoning that personally. Just want to make my stance very clear there. It's like we're trying to piss the kid off, complete mishandling of a huge prospect for the organization, and there are, some perspectives that are defending it, saying, hey, the Blue Jackets didn't do anything wrong, but for the most part, the way Columbus has managed David Jiricek has been very, very awkward. We'd already seen some of the extra rumors as to whether or not he feels like he is getting what he deserves, like he kind of needs more playing time, whatever, but Jiricek has been fairly good his entire time in Columbus. He had 38 points in 55 games last year with the Cleveland Monsters. This year, 17 points, 24 games, so let's say a 0.7 point per game-ish player. It's a pretty good rate, especially for a defenseman who's only 20 years old. He had 9 points in 36 Columbus Blue Jackets games. He hasn't looked out of place in that respect. He's been pretty okay. And so with the way the Blue Jackets have just maneuvered his entire development, he can't afford to have things like this. Have the Cleveland Monsters suffer because they're losing out on one of their best defenders and not even use the guy that you called up in the first place, and then try to send him back down a little bit too late. He tries to make it back to Cleveland on time to play against Hershey, and he doesn't get it. A lost weekend with no games. What a terrible way to manage your prospects. Now, all David Jiricek talk aside, there is another guy that I wanted to talk about. It's not like this team is misusing this guy per se, but there may be some alarming conversations that could go on in regards to his future with the team. We're going over to Minnesota and talking about Marco Rossi, the small Austrian stud that has really bested out all the expectations that we had of him. Rossi, as everybody knows, was one of my favorite players in the 2020 NHL Entry Draft. I had him like 4th or 5th overall on my board pretty much, but he slipped all the way to 9 and was taken by Minnesota. 22 years old, 5'9", 183 pounds, left-handed guy. He almost died from COVID, and he recovered from that miraculously, and now he's in the NHL. He's got 37 points in 71 games played and 20 goals, is one of the best rookies in the league right now behind Connor Bedard. In fact, if we go over to the NHL and we take a look at the rookie scoring race, Marco Rossi is right there. You can't really see that. That's off to the side here. If we go over to goals, he is the second most productive rookie in goals behind Connor Bedard. So Marco Rossi has been awesome. And I think for the most part, a lot of Minnesota Wild fans have been super stoked to see Rossi do what he's been doing. But there may be some reason for concern, because there was a Twitter thread posted on the Minnesota Wild subreddit that goes over how the Wild are apparently considering trading Rossi because he is too small. Here's the image. Let's go out there and click on this, make it bigger. There is a Twitter thread from about 5 hours ago. Nick goes out there and says, "Stop encouraging the minions, Michael. If Marco Rossi is on our team next year, we'll be in the same position, fighting to be mediocre. We need a real center to move forward. Small guys like Jared Spurgeon and Marco Rossi need to go as well. The way they get better, Nick, is not by trading 22-year-old talents because they lock themselves into an aging, undersized roster," Russo replies. Nick then says, "I'm not saying that's the route or the plan. I'm just saying that if we haven't pushed him down the lineup with an actual NHL top center at some point, we're not going to get any better." "If he's on our squad next year," Douglas replies. But Michael then goes out there and says one more thing that has been quite interesting. "The unfortunate thing is, I'm not sure Nick is wrong. I think the Wild are considering trading Rossi, which would be quite unreal, considering they've tried for 24 years to draft point-producing centers and swung and missed other than Eriksson Ek, Koivu, and now Rossi. Can you please elaborate on why they are considering this, Russo? Do they feel his value is currently at the highest? This makes zero sense. Honestly, I sense it is because of what Nick said." And so, the implication from this weird Twitter thread, I know it's not the easiest to read, so I apologize, but essentially Michael Russo, one of the main Minnesota Wild beat reporters and insiders, is saying that, yeah, I feel like the Minnesota Wild may be considering trading Rossi because of his size, because he's too small. And when you go over to the Minnesota Wild fan responses, I mean, they all kind of say similar things. "This would instantly make me turn on Bill Guerin and lose faith in upper management." Yeah, me too. If we traded Rossi after the improvements he's made, it's going to be ridiculous and show Billy G isn't nearly as good as we thought. He's already made some questionable moves. I feel exactly the same way. Rossi is not the guy we should be getting rid of at all. Screw that. He's been one of the best players on the team. Don't trade a future core player to chase aging vets. If I trade this young guy who's playing well, I could probably acquire and lock in 2 or 3 more vets who are past their prime and sign them to no-move clauses for the last 4 years of their careers. Yeah, okay, that's, kind of joking. I mean, there are some other comments that go out there and say, "Oh, I think maybe it was a misreading of the tweet. Maybe Russo didn't actually directly mean that, oh yeah, they're thinking about trading Rossi." But at the end of the day, I mean, there are a lot of semantics at play here. This isn't like the easiest thing to really absorb at face value, but just from the way everything is laid out, the conversation that was talked about, and the fact that Michael Russo is one of the top insiders in Minnesota, I mean, yeah, it's an awkward conversation to be having about Marco Rossi, who has been one of the best stories out of the Minnesota Wild prospect system in years. So if you're a fan of the Wild, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the notion of trading Rossi away because he's only 5'9", 183. I always personally thought that wouldn't be a problem, and for the most part, it hasn't been. He's doing pretty well, and last year he was a point-per-game player in the AHL, so we all kind of recognize there is talent here, despite the fact that he is only 5'9". But is it so bad to the point that the Minnesota Wild make some sort of a trade, they get some vets, and they let go of the Rossi experiment? You can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below if you're a fan of the Wild. Also, if you're a fan of the Blue Jackets, what are your thoughts on the way that David Jiricek has been developed? So, pretty unfortunate news all around for 2 of these guys that I absolutely love as hockey prospects. But if you're a fan of the Wild, fan of the Blue Jackets, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about your guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.